Welcome in, newest edition of Caught Stealing, the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Conway, at Colby R. Conway, over on X, and with me here, as always, Matt Selz, at the Selz Man. Matt, we're continuing to wind down here in the season, and full show today. We got some injury news and notes just to kind of touch on. We have a pretty notable prospect making their debut tonight as we're recording this on a Thursday. So he's making his debut. And then we'll talk about a kind of breakout sensation here in the last couple of weeks here in AL East starter. But before we get into all that juicy good stuff, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. It's setting up to be a wild, I guess, 2.5 weeks left of the regular season. The NL wild card is basically down to 4 teams. It feels like, with 3 of them likely to make it, and one of them's going to be awfully close and miss out. The AL East is a tit for tat battle here. So yeah, and we've got the White Sox ever-growing pursuit of the worst record in the history of baseball. So yeah, we've got all sorts of stuff to watch.
We have History Watch with the Shohei Ohtani going for history. We also have the Chicago White Sox going for history on arguably the complete other end of the spectrum. Complete stardom, the complete disaster.
Yeah.
Is that the word to use? I don't even know what word you want to call it, but I'm glad you mentioned
disaster. How about that? Unmitigated disaster?
Yeah, that's pretty good. As long as disaster or catastrophe or chaos could be arguably at what's going on there in Chicago. But I'm glad you mentioned the NL wildcard coming down to a couple of teams here. Right now, you got the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Mets holding the 3 spots in the wild card as we're recording this. Braves 1 game back, and then you got the Cubs at 5 games back. But kind of like you said, 4-horse race there. One of those teams with the Mets, 8-2 in their last 10 as they're recording this. They've been doing it pretty much without Kodai Senga for most of the year. Do you think there's any possibility that the Mets kind of say, even 2 or so innings of Senga in games is worth trying to get him back from the calf issue that he's been dealing with for the last little bit? Do you think Senga pitches at all in 2024? I guess is a way of wording that.
I think we're at the point where they have to consider it.
Yep.
Right? Because all you need is a ticket to the show. Who knows what happens, right? Watch what happened with the Diamondbacks last year, with the Rangers last year. Both of them were wild card teams, and made it. Obviously both of them were hot during the season and kind of cooled down a little late. The Mets are playing with house money at this point. Nobody expected them to be in this position. You can make the argument that had the Braves stayed healthy, there's no way they're in this position, right? Because the Braves are fighting with them, but they're down Acuna and Albies and Strider and now Austin Riley.
Everybody.
And they missed Michael Harris for like half a season. And then Jorge Soler got there and then got injured and slowed down and whatnot. So so I think they do. I think you got to try, not starting him. I wouldn't put that on him. But yeah, if you can bring him in for maybe 2 innings every third night or something and help the rest of your pen out, I think you've got to try and then just deal with stuff like, it's not like it's an elbow or a shoulder. It's a calf thing, right? So that's not as serious to me as an elbow. Like if it was an elbow or a shoulder, I would say probably not. Just see where this goes and then have him fully healthy for next year to make a run at stuff. But considering it's a soft muscle issue, I would try and get him out there and see what happens. Because if you get into the playoffs, who knows? Maybe you catch a team napping on you because, you weren't expected to be there and then you make it. I don't know. Not saying they are a World Series team. Don't misconstrue this, especially Justin Freeland, our buddy, who's a major Mets fan. But if they get in, anything can happen. We saw that last year.
And that's exactly it. To win it, you got to be in it. That's
Correct.
what it comes down to. And honestly, when it comes down to this too, the Mets can try to ramp him up to get back in a reliever role. Because I'm not mistaken, he can return on September 25th. That's when his 60-day is up. September 25th, that day, the Braves, they play the Braves on the 25th. The Mets only have 5 regular season games left at that point. When he is eligible to return, if he's healthy enough, They
Right.
should have a good idea of, do they need to? Do they want to? Or if they're out of it, there's literally no point. Just gear up for 2025 and let Senga be ready for 180 plus innings next year.
Right. And I think there's also, you have to be on the 40-man roster by a certain cutoff. And obviously, if he's on the 60-day IL, he's not on the 40-man roster.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll see what they do, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see if anybody's going to get like 5 innings out of him this season.
And the other thing too is they're on the cusp right now, but a lot can change because they end the year with 3 games set with Philly, 3 with Washington, 3 more with Philly, 3 with Atlanta, 3 with Milwaukee. Going into that date of the 25th, they could know like, well, we really screwed the pooch on this one,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it's over with.
aside from the Nats, that's not the easiest schedule, and the Nats always play the Mets hard because it's a divisional rivalry
Mhm.
game. So, um, we'll see. It could be pretty interesting.
Trying to pull this up quickly. I'm curious how the Mets are um, this year against the Nationals.
I know that the Braves lost the season series to the Nats.
Split versus opponent. Oh, okay. Never mind. Mets are 8-2 against Washington this year.
Yeah,
Sorry,
they're
Matt.
pretty good against them. They're
Sorry,
pretty
Matt.
good against them. That's all right.
Hey, at least they don't have to
Had
face
a decade
Pittsburgh down the
straight of
stretch
beating them.
too.
We had a decade straight of beating them, so I'm pretty fine.
Hey, you take it. Banners fly forever. So
Yep.
you have that. Another one here. James Grande had a really good tweet, or sorry, post, not tweets anymore.
I'm
Got to be
calling it a
better.
tweet.
Got to be better. He had a really good
Elon still
tweet.
calls it Twitter, so
I
I'm
just did it
still
again.
calling it Twitter.
I did it again. Son of a gun. Okay, let me start over. James Grande, good friend here at Fantasy Alarm,
Underscore
who
King.
also pitches in on the podcast as our pinch hitter here, had a good post basically saying that he was so happy that Bowden Francis has just realized now that he's just an elite pitcher in Major League Baseball. Where this has come from, I don't know if there was writing on the wall and it was underlying metrics that were there, but we have a guy, Matt, who prior to this year
Mm-hmm.
had made 21 appearances, no professional starts, and he was good across 37 innings of work. He's now coming to this year and made 11 starts. He's gone 8-4, a 3.5 ERA, and K per nine just under 8. But in his last 4 starts, he's carried a no-hitter into the 9th twice. The most recent one, he only had 1 strikeout against the Mets, which kind of limited still a good fantasy outing, but it kind of diminished the ceiling. But last 4 starts, sure. He's gotten the Angels in there, and then he got the Mets. But 29 innings, he's got a 1.55 ERA, a .076 BABIP against, and he's 2-1 with a 24-4 strikeout to walk ratio across 29 innings. All I have to say is, where did this come from? What has happened? Who is this guy? That's the next question.
Well, he appears to be Bowden Francis.
That's what he goes by, at least.
He
Is
appears
this Cy Young reincarnated?
He appears to be a 28-year-old unheralded pitcher from a farm system that is used to producing heralded guys that don't usually work out. I mean, Kevin Biggio's on his 4th team this year. I don't know. Sometimes things just click for a little bit for pitchers, and I think that's what we're seeing with Bowden Francis. If you're looking at rankings for, like, if you're starting draft prep and you're going, Bowden Francis is really turning into, no, please stop. It's a good 4-game stretch. It's been excellent. He's nearly pulled off 2 no-hitters in 4 games. But I think
There was
is he
nothing in the track
mixing
record to suggest this.
correct. Is he mixing his pitches a little bit better? Maybe. I don't know. In Wednesday night's start, which again carried a no through 8 innings, the pitch comm apparently broke at one point, and Bowden Francis used his glove and shook it 3 times to indicate the pitch, threw it dead middle, and the batter didn't swing.
Yep.
That's the kind of role that Francis is on right now, and I don't think there's any. Yeah. There's no analytics or sabermetrics or whatever you want to call it that's going to tell you it's just this guy's time right now. I mean,
And if you really want to look at, I mean, I'm looking at Baseball Savant, and it looks like he's added a splitter in this year. Which, if you watch the games, it seems like he throws it quite a lot, and the results have been good with it, with a 169 batting average against and a 24% whiff rate. I mean, really, his biggest kryptonite is the first batter in the ninth inning. That just
Yes.
seems to be his. We talk about pitchers can't get through the lineup the third time. Francis is fine. It's just that first batter in the ninth inning. Basically,
Right.
here's what I'm saying, and I say this in a little bit of jest. If you're watching a Blue Jays game
Get him
and
out in
Bowden
the eighth inning.
and Bowden, well, no, I'm doing this from my angle, selfishly. Bowden Francis is pitching. He's got his probably third no hitter in 5 starts going into the ninth inning. In the middle of that eighth inning, whomever is up first in the ninth inning, you sprinkle a little dough on that batter to hit a home run in that at bat, because that's his kryptonite.
I
That's the
swear
only
to
thing we
God,
have
if it's
against
Nick
him.
Castellanos and there's a national tragedy happening, live bet the home run odd immediately.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's it.
We hit
Hey,
one yesterday.
first batter in the ninth inning against Bowden Francis, just take the odds on the home run. Whomever it is, whatever it is, do it.
I
Actually,
will
that's
say
not
he
good
did
advice,
only
but
have one strikeout against the Mets.
he did.
He had 12 in his last no bid. But yeah, I think that's just a hot streak for him.
And I think you're right, because when you look at least even in this run, like, I hate to be a pessimist because I'm all for guys breaking out late,
Yep.
but let's move away from just the last 4. We'll go back to his last 7 starts. He's got a 1.50 ERA, which is awesome. But you look, the FIP's at a 3.45, the BABIP is at a .093. That's going to even out at some point.
Yeah,
It has to.
law of large numbers suggests that that's not sustainable.
Yeah, and even this year, I mean, for overall for the year, 3.50 ERA, but the FIP is nearly 4.5, and the xFIP is up above 4. To his
Correct.
credit, he does not hurt himself with walks. I will give him that. He does pump the strike zone, and he
Yeah.
doesn't walk batters, so he does avoid a lot of kind of self-mitigated damage or
Right, which is why
self-caused
the
damage.
Sierra is still 3.89 because he's not walking a ton of guys.
Yeah,
So
and over his last 48 days, I mean, he's got a 46-5 strikeout to walk ratio. I mean, he's not hurting himself. Now, it is interesting because, like, in that Mets game, when you look at it, like, if I go over to his plate discipline in that, like, Mets game, I mean, even so, like, 84% contact rate's a little high, but he seems like he's the type of guy, even at his best, as we're seeing here, he wants to be a pitch to contact guy and work deeper into games. That 12 strikeout performance is not something we're going to see often.
correct.
Like, he's going to settle in 5, 6, 7, right around a strikeout an inning, but he is content with just pumping the strike zone with fastballs, throwing that splitter, getting ground balls, and getting out of innings. That's
I mean, to
exactly
give
what he
you
is.
to give you an idea, the 46 strikeouts in the last 4 starts, he has 118 total strikeouts in his MLB career, including the stretch he's now on. So, like, we're talking about a guy who's accounted for sorry, not his last the 46 isn't in his last 4 starts, but still. The uptick in strikeouts accounts for more than a third of his MLB total over a smattering of 2.5 seasons.
Mhm.
That should tell you it's nothing but, I mean, it's a great hot streak and ride him while he's hot, but as soon as he starts to cool down, don't need him.
Yep. And you can be a functional fantasy asset without a ton of strikeouts.
Correct.
And Francis's key to fantasies, I don't want to say stardom, but path to fantasy viability is hang out around a strikeout per inning. You can be around 8K per 9. You don't walk batters, help your whip, work yourself into 6, 7 inning games, and be that person that basically, when you go out there, it's like, oh, Bowden Francis on the mound. What am I getting? I'm going to get 6 to 7 innings, 5 or 6 hits, 1, 2, or 3 earned runs, 4 to 6 strikeouts, just
Yep.
like clockwork. Just be that every single time you go out there, and continue to develop the splitter, make that your next pitch, and then you can really ride that. Because if he's going to at least do that to generate a ton of ground balls, I don't care if he's going to allow a lot of contact, because you don't get hurt as much on the ground as you do through the air.
Right. Also, you can make efficient starts, which gets you deeper into games, and then your innings help keep ratios down. So, yeah, I mean, he's At his best, he's nothing but an SP5 for fantasy, maybe an SP4 if the strikeouts.
Hmm.
But like, please do not go into next year and go, oh well, this guy really got hot down the stretch against some teams whose offense has been, I mean, aside from the Phillies, whose offense has been questionable for most of the season. Like even the Mets, like they're charging, yeah, but if you look at the WAR on that team, there's one guy carrying that entire roster. Francisco Lindor has like 5 higher WAR
Yep.
than anybody else on that roster. So please don't go drafting Bowden Francis as like an SP2 because he was really hot for 5 games. Not gonna work.
Enjoy the production now. Going into 2025, we'll
Yes.
recalibrate and temper expectations.
Yep.
But another, not as quite as well, he's not as old as Bowden Francis, but we do have a notable prospect, at least by name and
Oh, real
pedigree.
real quick. Speaking of, I know
Okay.
we're gonna talk about this team, but deGrom's coming back.
deGrom and Scherzer are both
Yes,
expected to return this weekend. Yep,
this
got
weekend.
that. Yep. For other injury news and notes, good, nice segue there, Matt. Head over to Fantasy Alarm, check out the Fantasy Baseball Injury Report. I documented deGrom and Scherzer, and I think it was a week or two ago I mentioned that deGrom was probably pacing for about a mid-September return,
Yep.
and that's pretty much where we're going to be at there. So, yep, Texas will be getting 2 studs back, and
Yeah,
honestly, too,
if they're still out there, take a shot on them. I mean, they're not gonna make a huge difference at this point, but if you are close in categories, they could do enough to bump you up.
at the very least, you've made it this far without them. What they can do can only help.
Correct.
So let's stick with Texas. Another guy coming up here, and poor teams facing Texas at this point. But Kumar Rocker going to make
Yes.
his MLB debut tonight as we're recording this on Thursday. What are we seeing here with Rocker? Because obviously his name has been floated around in prospect world for quite some time, and then across 2 levels over his last about 26 and 2/3 innings, he's just been, I have no other way to say it, but flat out dominant. So what do we make of Rocker at the big league level here, and can he stick the rest of the way?
I mean, he was, for all intents and purposes, a co-ace on that Vanderbilt staff with another guy who's in the Ranger system, Jack Leiter. College is obviously quite different than professional baseball. We've seen plenty of guys be number 1 picks and flounder. Mark Appel was dominant in college, never never made the majors with 2 different organizations. Kumar Rockers had a bizarre run through the minors and some independent ball and then the Rangers. Um, yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited for his debut. I'm not overhyping him just yet. Um, but he has been unbelievable in the upper minors this year. He's been practically unhittable, striking out everybody and their mother. And then when their father comes down to see what he's doing, he strikes him out too. Um, do I think he sticks? Yeah, why not? Texas isn't totally out of the playoffs yet. It's going to take a miracle run for them to make the playoffs. But if your offense isn't clicking, which it's not for Texas right now and hasn't been for a bunch of the season, and some of your big bats aren't there and aren't clicking, and the best way you can win games is by shutting down the opposition. So adding Kumar Rocker to that rotation and then getting deGrom and Scherzer back is huge. And why wouldn't you keep Rocker up and just let him converse with Scherzer and deGrom and learn the craft of pitching? Like, he doesn't have to pitch to learn things,
Mhm.
right? Like Mariano Rivera's famous cutter came from a bullpen after talking to just a handful of guys, and he worked it and it cut, and he was like, "Okay, I'm good," and then wrote it all the way to the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
Rocker can learn sequencing. He can learn new grips. He can learn the art of pitching from deGrom and Scherzer, even if he's not pitching. So I would leave him up. I would see what he can do. If he's available, go pick him up. Why not? Take a flyer. You'll get a couple of starts out of him. And if they go well, then you get some strikeouts. You get a decent amount of ERA and whip relief. Yeah. I mean, going into next year, that's where things get a little tricky because I would have liked to have seen more innings from him. And that's the main concern for next year
Mhm.
is what his innings load's going to be. Because if you're looking at Fangraphs and you look at his minor league numbers that go back to 2023, there's not a stint in there that includes more than 28 innings pitched at any stop along the way, and there's only 4.
Mhm.
So, little concerned about just how far they can push him next year. Um, but yeah, overall, I'd pick him up as a flyer for this year.
And for the Rangers, I think when you said that they should keep him up, it makes sense because when you look, I mean, yeah, they're 8 spots back of a wild card. But when you look here, they're about to open a 3-game or 4-game set with Seattle. Then they come back with them with 3 more games after a little stint with the Blue Jays. So like they can make some ground up, and now you could potentially have Andrew Heaney, Kumar
Correct.
Rocker, deGrom, and Scherzer
Yeah, you
at
would
like
have
your
pretty
4.
much the hope of the rotation you thought you were going to start. What you've been paying for a while now. So
And not to mention Nathan Eovaldi. So you would have your 5 would be Eovaldi, Heaney, Rocker, deGrom, Scherzer.
and aside from the blow up start for Cody Bradford, he's been okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like I said, you got 7 with Seattle left for the 2024 season, and then sprinkle in 3 with the Blue Jays. And off the top of your head, I'm looking at it, so I know. But do you know who their final 6 games of the year are against?
It's not against the Astros, is it?
3 with Oakland and 3 with the Angels.
Oh, so the bottom feeders of the AL
If
West.
they can make a run in their next 10 games, 7 of which are against Seattle, 3 are Toronto, say 7-3. At the very least, they take the majority against the Mariners. They're going to gain ground. They're going to move up. And then when it comes to those must-win games, they're not playing Houston and Cleveland down the stretch. They are playing Oakland and the Angels, who are about 2 injuries away from you and I entering their starting lineup.
Yep.
Actually,
But hey,
both
they can
teams,
punt
maybe.
3 times in a row for hits.
Yeah, like Texas is not out of this. There are far more worse spots to be in, but they got to
Yeah.
take care of business
Although
first.
Fangraphs gives them a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs right now, which probably fair
I mean,
because
don't get me wrong; it's an uphill battle.
they do have to chase down the Mariners, who have been. I mean, if nothing else, they've got a stacked rotation who
Yeah,
doesn't really allow. I mean, Logan Gilbert, not to go on a tangent, but Logan Gilbert has been a pain in my rear end this year because he's got a losing record. He has a
right.
losing record and has been remarkably good.
Yep.
Like all year, it's unbelievable. He has a 3.15 ERA. And by the way, all of the expected ERA, FIP, and XFIP are all within 0.03 runs of that ERA. So it sticks, right? He's been that good. His
Yep.
whip is below 1, 0.88 whip. The man is 7-11.
Yep.
He's not even close to 500. He's 7-11 because he gets 0. His last game, Logan Gilbert pitched 8 innings, gave up 2 hits, 2 earned, 10 strikeouts, took a loss.
I mean that's where we're at though. And then
The last 3 games, he's gone at least 6 innings, given up a grand total of 6 earned runs, a grand total of 10 hits between. Let's see. So the last 3 games combined, he's pitched 20 innings, given up 10 hits, given up 6 earned, 2 total walks, with 29 strikeouts, 2 no decisions, and a loss.
if you go back, Gilbert's last 18 starts, 3.21 ERA, 2.91 FIP, and he's got a 4-9 record to show for it.
This
His
is why
last
wins don't matter for Cy Young anymore.
Well, that's true. He's gotten 1 win in his last 10 starts. He is 1-6 despite a 3.58 ERA and a 2.23 FIP. His last win came on August 10th. It is September 12th as we are recording this.
I drafted him to be a co-ace with Zach Wheeler, and even though the numbers are great, like his innings are great, 185 and 2/3, striking out more than a guy per inning. He's not walking very many dudes. His ERA is great. His WHIP is .88. He's just not bringing wins because that offense can't stop themselves from striking out.
Yep.
I mean,
And
look at Brian Wu last night.
yeah.
Had to battle his rear end off and go perfect through 6 innings just to have a shot at a win.
Well, and then just to bring this all back around to Kumar Rocker too, he's going to open up against the Mariners, and that offense runs hot and cold. And lately, it's been cold, so like there's a
Yeah,
very good chance he can go out there, strike out 10 batters in like 5 innings, and be
exactly.
fine.
Because they also lead the majors in strikeouts. Again.
They sure do. And if you go
Turns
every
out
fifth day,
Eugenio wasn't the problem.
yeah, and if you go every fifth day, he'll start the 12th against Seattle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Then he gets the Blue Jays, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Then he gets Oakland, and then one more against LA. So his 4 starts down the stretch would be Seattle, Toronto, Oakland, Angels. It's not a bad 4 to go against to end the year. So look to add Kumar Rocker if he's available. Quick note, any other prospects worth watching here down the stretch that could be called up? Maybe a Jackson Jobe type if he's going to get the call, or does Detroit not even bother bringing him up this year?
Maybe. I mean, Jackson Jobe's going to start Saturday at AAA for the Toledo Mud Hens against the Omaha Storm Chasers. I'm going to the game on Friday night, so I was hoping. It was announced over the weekend he was coming up, and so I was hoping this whole week that the one game I get to go to he would start. But no, it's the next night, which I unfortunately can't go to see. But there's a chance that Detroit. I mean, I know Detroit's basically out of it. They've been hot of late. I don't know. Do they give him a shot to go with the majors just to make it easier for him to make the opening day roster next year?
Only 3 games back from the wild card too.
Maybe there's a. I mean, if he has an absolute, let's say he pitches twice in AAA, they could still get 2 starts out of him in the majors at this point.
Mhm.
There's a possibility if he like has Skeensian type starts. So watch for him because he's the next top pitching prospect. But that's about it in terms of difference makers at this point.
Fair enough. And let's wrap it up as we always do, waiver wire pickup and weekend streamer. So we're doubling up this week. Both got the same one. You need some help with the stick. Look at Trey Sweeney, 112 WRC plus, and it's getting called up. And he's got solid fly ball numbers, average exit velocity at 92.6 miles per hour and a 52.1% hard hit rate. He can get it going, and he's been doing it, and he's done pretty well overall since he's gotten the call. So, I mean, Trey Sweeney's a guy that we can look at, and he's hardly owned, especially in ESPN fantasy leagues, like most people seem to be. So I would take a look at Trey Sweeney. Anything else to add on him?
No. I mean, you need a productive bat at this point in the season to fill some middle infield gaps. Go for it.
Yep, hitting 242, 468 slug, 4 homers, 2 stolen bases across 21 games at the big league level. And then we just spent a lot of time talking about Texas, so let's do it a little bit more. After Seattle has to face Kumar Rocker, after they face Jacob deGrom, after they face Max Scherzer, they get Andrew Heaney on Sunday. And Heaney's owned in just under 20% of ESPN fantasy leagues. And over his last 4 starts, he's got a 1.71 ERA and a K per 9 above 11. To be fair, he has faced the Angels, White Sox, and Pirates across 3 of those starts, but Heaney doesn't make the schedule. He just goes out there and pitches, and he's pitched pretty darn well of late. And Seattle, like we just spent the 7 minutes prior to this talking about, that offense, strikeout prone. And if there's anything Heaney has done well at times, is he can rack up strikeouts in bunches. So I'm looking to Andrew Heaney on Sunday.
Yeah, the ratios may not be good for him anymore, but if you're streaming a guy or playing DFS and strikeouts matter for that, Heaney's in a good spot. He strikes out a pretty decent amount of guys. And Seattle strikes out a lot on their own. I could go out there and probably rack up 5-6 strikeouts, and I don't throw above 82 miles an hour.
Fair.
So, and if Colby's calling pitches, maybe I strike out 7. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, I would stream Heaney because if anything, they may just be tired from having to face Kumar Rocker and Scherzer and deGrom.
That is a tough trio to go beforehand. But overall, for the year, Mariners' 4th highest strikeout rate against left-handed pitchers. Not to mention the league's worst batting average at 208. Yes, even worse than the Chicago White Sox in that department. So Andrew Heaney on Sunday. Yeah, take a look at him. And of course, if you become an all pro subscriber over at Fantasy Alarm today, as you're chasing that title for your fantasy baseball leagues, you can access the minds of us analysts here at Fantasy Alarm. Ask your questions right in the Discord, get that one-on-one conversation, or one to many if you tag all of us in there. So be happy to help you out there. Make sure you give myself a follow over on X at Colby R. Conway. Give Matt Selz a follow at the Selz Man. Check out all the great content, like and subscribe where you are listening, and check out all the great content over at Fantasy Alarm. And we will see you next week with the newest edition of Caught Stealing.